The world premiere production of Miss Rhythm, The Legend of Ruth Brown, is now playing at the Garner Galleria Theater in the Denver Performing Arts Center. It runs through October 22nd. Tickets are available at denvercenter.org. Joining me on the phone now is Sheryl McCallum, who tells the story of R&B singer Ruth Brown and musical director and pianist David Nehls. Thanks for being guest today on Backstage Jazz.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Why don't we start at the beginning? Can you tell our listeners how this tribute and production of Miss Rhythm came together?
It started about a couple of years ago. David and I were doing a show at Cherry Creek Theater, and he asked me if I knew who Ruth Brown was. And of course, I'm like, yes, of course I know who Ruth Brown. And he had this wonderful treatment for a show that he did. And I say it all the time. I still love that treatment of it. In reading it and going over it, it wasn't quite how I thought the story should be done, where it was actually someone portraying her in one of her performances in New York. And I'm particular about portraying someone. For me, I'm like, well, I don't look like her. I don't sound like her. I don't sing in her key, but I'd love to tell her story. And then we started working on the script, and David so graciously let me kind of finagle it and put it in my words. And this is what it turned out to be. David, jump in there.
Well, and I think it was the best decision because it makes it so much more personal, and it's storytelling, which is like the most basic human way of communicating. It's so cool. And Sheryl is a great storyteller. And there are times where she actually does play Ruth Brown a little bit, and but it's all in that mode of storytelling, and we're able to tell the story with all these songs. It's such a great way to tell this story, as opposed to like they tell the Billie Holiday story in a play called Lady Day at the Emerson's Bar and Grill, which was the initial intent. And now I think that was, while it was a good idea, but I feel like it's been done. And this is much more, it's much more fun. And
it is literally telling her story and jumping in and out of her. But, you know, like David said, it's about storytelling, which I love to do because I love to talk. So I think it's a great way to get this across.
And you do such a wonderful job, Sheryl. I saw the play last week, and it was just sucked right in. It was just great. It was almost like being in a small cabaret there. Do you want to talk about how the show has evolved since the time you put it together?
You know, pandemic happened.
Yes.
As we all know.
That thing.
And, you know, we had some time on our hands.
Okay.
And since we had that discussion when we were at Cherry Creek Theater, Sheryl and I started working on it because the Miners Alley Playhouse in Golden, Colorado, was doing streaming cabaret concerts twice a month during the pandemic. So we were allowed 15 people in the audience as per CDC regulations. Right, yeah. And then we would stream out to sometimes up to 200 people. And it was very inexpensive, but it was to produce, but it was also a way for them to keep their audiences engaged while they couldn't produce. So we did this as one of them in September 2020. They liked it so much, they asked us to retool it. And we just kept working on it. And we came back and did it again as one of these concerts in February of 2021. And then that led to Alicia Bruce at the Galleria being interested in it.
One of the things I was fascinated with when I was watching the show was the use of multimedia and how brilliantly it was done. Can you talk about that process and how you worked that in so well?
I have to give that to our wonderful director who we brought in, you know, because at some point, Dave and I kind of took it as far as we could. But we knew when the Galleria was looking to make it just much more theatrical and everything. That's our wonderful director, Kenny Moten. And because David and I played with, in our first incarnation of this, or whatever the word is, of this, when it was a cabaret show, I said most of those lines, and David said a lot of them. So they were divided between us. And then when we had another production, we used voiceovers. So we were thinking about that, doing that. And then when we were going to do this production with the band, with all of that, Kenny Moulton just came in and said, wait a minute, we have 5 people behind us. Let's try to incorporate the band into the show. So along with the band, and then also the multimedia. So I'm telling you, he just popped it off from the page to what you see. So I give him a lot of credit for bringing in that multimedia. And I think it works so well.
It works perfectly. And that was kind of one of my next questions was it difficult to have these musicians become actors? And they play a couple different roles, right?
Well, that's a funny question.
I mean, musicians can be actors.
Absolutely not. They're living their Oscar-winning dreams up there on that stage. I mean, we actually had to give them the note this past week. They had to tone it down.
Really? I thought they were great.
They really are. I think initially, and a lot of them do sing, they're wonderful gig musicians in Denver, but to actually now be a part of the show and in costume, normally they go sit in the pit and wear their blacks, but they're an integral part of this show. And they are living it up. Yes.
Sometimes too much.
It was a fun surprise. It was a fun surprise to see that from the audience there, too.
Good time. I mean, sometimes we're having too good a time. But I think that transcends the stage lights.
It definitely comes through. Since we're talking about the music and musicians, how did the song selection process come about?
I mean, at first it was Sheryl and I during the pandemic, just sifting through all the material that's out there. Ruth Brown has been recording she was recording from 1949 to 2006. So there's a lot to garner. And Garner Galleria, see what I did there? It was really fun to dive into that aspect of it. And then, of course, in this incarnation, it's about the licensing.
Is there one favorite tune in the performance for either of you that stands out?
There's so many, but I'm just starting to enjoy the song "Teardrops from My Eyes," just where it is in the show, what it's coming in and out of, and what it's leading to. Plus, it's just a hot number. It's become one of my favorites, and it's hard to pick, but it's just so fun.
Every time it rains, I think of you, and that's the time I feel so blue. When the rain starts to falling, my love comes tumbling down, and it's raining teardrops from my eyes. Well, if you see clouds here in my
For me, I think it's Cabbage Head.
Oh, that too.
Because look, when we did this show up at Miners Alley, Cabbage Head has been one of my favorite songs since the late 90s. And when Sheryl came into a rehearsal one day and said, we should do Cabbage Head, I almost did a backflip.
Yes.
And then to see her do it every night and kill it, and everybody like responding the way they do to that song, it's really magic.
Saturday night, honey, when I come home, and baby, I was tired as I could be. I saw this coat hanging up on the rack where I know my coat ought to be. I said to my man, look here, darling man, come here, please explain this mess to me. Whose coat is that coat hanging on the rack where I know my coat ought to be? He said, wife, oh my darling wife, sweetheart, can't you plainly see that ain't nothing but an old choir roll that your preacher left here for me? Now I have traveled this world for a many miles, and darling, I hope to travel more. But I have never seen a choir roll with a fur collar on it before. Saturday night, honey, when I got home, I was still tired as I could be. Oh, baby, there were some shoes outside my door where I know my shoes supposed to be. Now I said to my man, darling man, you better really explain this mess to me. Whose shoes are those shoes outside the door where you know my shoes supposed to be? He said, oh wife, darling wife, sweetheart, can't you plainly see that ain't nothing but an old pair of rain boots, and my mama sent them to me. Now I have traveled this world for a many miles, and I sure hope to travel more. I have never seen rain boots with spiked heels on it before. Well, last night when I come home, tired as I could be, oh, darling, there was a head laying in my bed where I know my head's supposed to be. Again, I called my man, my darling man. Honey, I said, you better explain this mess to me. Whose head is that head in the bed where my head is supposed to be? He said, oh, my wife, oh, my tired wife. Sweetheart, can't you plainly see? That ain't nothing but an old cabbage head. And baby, you know what? Your mama sent that to me. Well, darling, I have traveled this world for a many miles, and I know I'm gonna travel more. But I have never in my life seen a cabbage head with a hairnet on it before. because I'm not listening to this crap anymore. If you will check it out, you will now see your key don't fit my door no more, darling. And nobody sent that door here. That's the same one been here all the time. I just called the locksmith in, and I'm sorry about that. Back on up, back up. Go back to wherever that cabbage head is. Go back and look for it, because you ain't got no place here. And I mean, I have had it. I've had it up to here. And I'm not going to say my darling man no more, because you are not my darling man. In fact, if you want to be safe, you better start running. Because you know what? Do you see this package I got in my hand? And this ain't no Christmas present either. What does it look like to you? A shotgun. You ain't never lied. So let's see how fast you can move. Listen, I know you better put your glasses on, because you are really the blind one here. Take a good look, baby, and I tell you, I got one shell, and I don't miss. I am an expert shooter, and the back of your butt will make an excellent target. Move! Get out of here, you stinking liar. Let him out of here. Never in my life.
If you're just joining me now, I'm speaking with Sheryl McCallum and pianist and musical director David Nehls. They're part of Miss Rhythm, The Legend of Ruth Brown, which is playing at the Garner Galleria Theater at the Denver Performing Arts Center. Thanks again, you guys, for being on the show today.
Absolutely.
You know, I admired Ruth Brown's determination to continue after a major car accident, and especially her friends like Red Fox and Bonnie Raitt, who came forward to support her. That was such a touching moment in the production. Can you talk about that?
I mean, Red, and we forget she knew all these people as she was with Atlantic and performing. So she knew, not Bonnie Raitt per se, but like Red Fox. They went back to her early years with Atlantic. When I say in the beginning of the show, this is just a peek into Ruth's life. Ruth was at the time when the singer was the headliner. So when it was time, when she met Red Fox again in the 70s, after Atlantic let her go and everything, it was a time when now the comedians were the headliners. So it was a surprise to her, but she went to see him, you know, just the same.
Sure.
And he remembered something how she helped him out back in the day. So he said, I'm just returning what you did for me. So she knew him from a long time ago. And then, you know, Bonnie Raitt was just such a supporter, again, with her father and knowing just these old blues singers.
Yeah.
She was just such a fan, and to take, you know, to help in the foundation, the Rhythm and Blues Foundation, and then just to take these old artists on tour where they can live to see it and live to reap the benefits was something else. David, feel free.
Like when you talk about all the folks that came through her life, she touched everybody. And it's not even just like the famous people. We hear stories about how when her son was just talking a couple of weeks ago, how she'd remember everybody she met. And she said, I remember you were wearing that red shirt in that concert that was a couple of years ago, and you were sat in that row. You know, she was really very, very special. Yeah,
the clip I was talking about was there was a Bonnie Raitt award ceremony, and she just went into this thing, how impressed she was with Ruth and what an influence her music was on Bonnie Raitt's music there. Yeah, it was just great.
Yeah,
I love those video clips. It was great.
Yeah, she introduced Ruth as she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that's where that clip comes from. But yeah, I mean, just such an icon introducing an icon.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they toured together for a while.
Yeah,
too.
they toured together.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. Neat.
Yeah, Ruth Brown, another old blues musician, Brown. And matter of fact, they were in Red Rocks
wow.
in the 90s. On one of their tours, but they toured together.
God, can you imagine seeing that show?
Our guitar player did.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, before I let you go, just one last question here. What do you want the audience to take away after the performance is over?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. What I hear mostly, and which makes me proud, a lot of people, they take away the fact that we're introducing them to someone that they never heard of before. And that they never knew. If they knew her, they knew bits of her. You say one thing and it's like, oh, I didn't know that was her. But a lot of people never even knew who she was. And so they come away with knowing the history about someone that they never knew, wondering why they didn't know who she was. And like David said, she touches everyone. This is people from staunch, avid music, just music lovers, to theater lovers, to just people that love history. So a lot of them come away with, I need to get to know her a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And as I get to know her, let me find out about some of these other artists that didn't quite get their due earlier. But another thing I like about her and what they take away with was the fact that she got to get her flower. You know, she didn't die, and not to disparage anyone else, but she didn't die broken in jail, penniless on the street.
Right.
She got to get her flowers. The takeaway.
Yeah, and our house manager says that at the end of the show, she sees a lot of people immediately get on their phone and start Googling Ruth Brown. And that's, in our day and age, that's really a great thing, especially, I think, people who feel like, why don't I know this person? We're forgetting these people. We're forgetting these wonderful performers that shaped the music that we listen to today. And we shouldn't let them fade from memory. To highlight them. And Ruth is a hero of mine personally. So to be able to do this is a great honor for me. And to do it with Sheryl, who I've known for so long, is so fun. we have such a good time doing it, and it shows in the audience that they're having a good time too.
Yes.
So that takeaway of people gaining knowledge from this while having a really good time, I think, is great.
I was also amazed how many number one Billboard hits Ruth Brown had. There's images that come up on the screen of number one for this, number one for that. And I'm going, wow, I knew she was good, but number one hits. It's amazing. Yeah.
And they cranked them out. We say she had 21 top 10, and again, 5 of those number one, and they lasted on the R&B chart. She flipped over and some were on the pop charts. Well, she was a powerhouse with Atlantic and beyond.
Absolutely. Just want to remind our listeners, Miss Rhythm, The Legend of Ruth Brown, is now playing at the Garner Galleria Theater in the Denver Performing Arts Center, a beautiful place to go. If you're new or live in Denver, it's a wonderful place to visit. And the show runs through October 22nd. Tickets are available at denvercenter.org. Thanks for your time today, Sheryl and David.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. It's been a pleasure.